Welcome to the award ceremony of the First Step School of Elocution and the 30th year anniversary celebrations of the First Step Montessori School. We will start off tonight's proceedings by the lighting of the traditional oil. I call upon our chief guest for the evening, Honorable Minister Mrs. Rosie Senanaika, followed by Reverend Sister Kanti Pereira, Reverend Father Kalana Pilis, Dr. Maitri Pereira, Mrs. Suhashini Victoria, Mrs. Majida Silva, Mr. Gerard Tisavir Singha, Mr. Chanaka Tisavir Singha, Mrs. Gertrude Tisavir Singha, Mrs. Sarojini Vijay Singha, Mrs. Chamari Tisavir Singha, Mrs. Danya Tisavir Singha, Mrs. Kamini Samarapur, Mrs. Madhurika Davare, Miss Menushi Madhuvanti, Mrs. Kaushalya Komalige, Mrs. Dilruchi Jesunadu, Mr. Prasanna Silva, Mr. Kamini Samarapur, Mr. Rohan Vijayvardhana, and one of our oldest students, Anuttara Marasimha. Extend a warm welcome to our distinguished guests. Our chief guest, Honorable Minister Mrs. Rosie Senanaika, current State Minister for Child Development, not to mention a very beautiful woman, a holder of the prestigious title of Mrs. World. She is also the chief organizer for the Colombo West Electorate, as well as a goodwill ambassador to the United Nations Population Fund. It is clear to say that we have been graced by the presence of a person that wants only the very best for mankind.
We warmly welcome Reverend Sister Kanti Pereira, Principal of St. Anne's Convent, Wattala, Father Kalana Inshara Piris, and also Dr. Maitri Pereira.
Mrs. Suhashini Victoria, President of IWMS, Mrs. Majela Silva, Examiner of IWMS, Mr. Asanga De Silva, founder of the Three-Tal Art of Dance, one of the choreographers of the series The Dancing Stars, Mr. Rohan Vijayvardhana, Deputy Director of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, IT Department, teachers and parents. I invite our headmistress, Madam Chamari Tisavira Singha, to deliver the welcome note.
Reverend members of the clergy, distinguished guests, parents, teachers, past pupils, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you. A very good evening to our dear, lovely lady, Mrs. Rosie Senanaika. I warmly welcome you in a very special way, Honorable Mrs. Rosie Senanaika, Minister of Women's and Child's Affairs, for gracing this occasion as our chief guest this evening in spite of all her busy schedule. Welcome, Madam. I also welcome very sincerely Reverend Father Kalana Piris, Parish Priest of St. Mary's Church, Mathugama, Reverend Sister Kanti Pereira, Principal of St. Anne's Convent, Mrs. Suhashini Victoria, President of the Institute of Western Music and Speech, for having accepted our invitation and joining us this evening. Parents, as you all know, today we are conducting the annual award ceremony of the First Step School of Elocution, coinciding with the 30th year anniversary of the First Step Montessori School. We have lined up a series of events which show the skills and talents of students who are with us in these two institutions. We invite you to enjoy with us this evening the program that is lined up, and we thank God for giving us good weather and confidence. I also thank all sponsors who assisted with the souvenir. A special thank you to Dynasty for their crew, for their joint choreography done excellently. Hope all of you will enjoy the show, and you must excuse my voice today. Thank you very much.
I call upon our chief guest to grace us with a few words by her presence.
Distinguished guest, ladies and gentlemen, dear kids, I've got a letter in front of me which I received on the 10th of this month. And that is none other than from Chamari Thisavira Singha. But I know her not as the principal of the First Step Montessori and the School of Drama and Elocution. I know her as the daughter-in-law of a very dear friend of mine. This friend has been a confidant, he's been a friend, and he's given me immense inspiration. His dear wife is seated here right in front, Sarojini Vijay Singha. My dear friend is no more on this earth. When Chamari invited me to be present at this beautiful occasion, I had to decline the invitation because these are days that keeps us on our toes as we are about to launch into an election which is going to determine the future of this nation. But as I read the letter, and when I knew that Chamari is so dear, or she was so dear to my friend, that I could not refuse this invitation. I had to accept it. So I sent a little text to Mrs. Sarojini Vijay Singh and said, no matter what, I'm going to be here on this stage, and I would grace the occasion. So here I am, speaking a few words. I'm yet to witness this beautiful platform of drama, music, and dance. I've known Chamari's husband and his family and Chamari, and I've also learned that this particular School of Drama and Elocution have excelled to the point where when it started 30 years ago, it had only 20 students, and today it has almost 400 students. So that tells a story. And that also tells a story that there is a need in this country to improve and learn the language of English. I was appalled just the other day to watch a news bulletin on where one of the television networks had done a little documentary on how important the language of English is, and to see if kids in the normal schools do excel in English. And it was said, according to the documentary, that almost 50% or 55% of students fail the language of English. And even out of the few that passes the language of English at the O-level examination, could not converse in the language. And whilst doing the documentary, they also interviewed kids from various schools and random people from the streets, asking them what did they think of the language of English. Some, of course, tried to speak in English. They attempted to speak in English and say that it is important. Some said, there were various comments. And then I remember, I'm sure many of you would have watched this news item. I remember the anchor of the program took the mic to a school van and asked a few kids, what do you think of the language of English? Do you speak English? How important it is? And the children shied away. They spoke nonsense, in my opinion, about a language which, in my opinion, is the linked language of the world, which is a language that we all need to learn simply because today the whole world has evolved into a knowledge economy, and also we live in a borderless global village. In a knowledge economy, when we live in a borderless global village, the linked language is of paramount importance to us. And we think that it is not important, we don't need to learn another language. Then that's a very sad state of affairs, in my opinion. Because I realized how ignorant our students can be simply because that is what we are teaching our students. We don't need to learn another language. Universally, all over the world, every student has to learn a second language. That's compulsory. But how much emphasis do we as a nation put on a second language? Do we insist on our kids learning a second language? I know it is in the curriculum. I know it's a compulsory subject when it comes to O-levels. But do we actually emphasize on the importance of learning a global second language? I would like to commend the parents today for taking that initiative to teach your child a second language, not just to go through the normal school curriculum, but to also excel in that language, to learn it properly, to learn to communicate with the language properly, and to express yourself. Because I have seen so many academics in this country who have done brilliantly well in the language of Sinhala. They're scholars in the language of Sinhala. But when they have to go overseas, or sometimes they have to face an interview, they fail simply because of the lack of not knowing a second language, or not knowing the linked language, or not knowing the universally accepted language that would ease our lives in a 21st century context. Because in the 21st century context, like I mentioned earlier, we live in a borderless global village. In a flick of a button, you can interact with the rest of the world. But when we do interact with the rest of the world, do we understand the rest of the world? when every other country is making every effort to learn a second language, and most importantly, the universal language of link, which is English. How many of us do think that yes, we need to put a little bit of emphasis? So I strongly believe that every parent who is sitting here, every family member who is sitting here today have realized the importance of mastering a second language and the universal language. And therefore, you have basically entrusted your students to learn the language properly from this beautiful school that teaches the language to perfection. Now, just by walking in here and listening to the two young students who were basically, they took on the challenge of addressing you on this podium, and in the way in how they hold themselves, in the way in how they speak, it is pretty evident that they are in safe hands. So parents, guardians, I think your kids are in safe hands, and I'm looking forward to witnessing the performances the little ones from the Montessori to the School of Drama and Elocution perform on this stage. And it might be a fun-filled evening. And I also wish Chamari and her school all the very best. And I also wish Chamari the strength and the power to expand her school, where she could be able to accommodate more than 400 students and expand to other cities and districts as well, because elocution and learning the language of English and being able to communicate exceptionally well is of paramount importance, in my opinion. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the very best.
Ever since the inception of the First Step Montessori School in 1985, we have had the vision to improve the standard of English and Montessori education. It is a vision that has led the First Step Montessori and School of Elocution to be the premier and trusted choice for many parents. A story of Sri Lanka's history in the form of a multifaceted dance act. The dance begins with the story of King Dutugamanu and various styles of traditional dancing. Please give a round of applause to the senior students of our school.
Throughout the ages, travelers from all corners of the world have journeyed to a mystical and magnificent island nestled in the heart of the Indian Ocean. All through history, this island nation has been referred to by many a name, such as Taprobane, Serendib, the granary of the East, and still to this day, the pearl of the Indian Ocean.